Hello, sir. Jai Bhim. Good morning. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, all. I am Akash Sanjay Khubragade, PhD scholar at Delhi University and coordinator of Karunakar Institute of Dalit Knowledge. Uh, 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 Abbreviation is KIDK. I welcome you all for the second online lecture organized by KIDK. Dalit Knowledge Lecture Series started. This Dalit Knowledge Lecture Series started on the occasion of Ambedkar Jayanti 2025, organized by KIDK, first online institute of Dalit Knowledge Studies. Our first lecture was delivered by Professor Chinna Rao sir, Center for Inclusion Studies, JNU. This day for today's this for today's in this lecture series today we have Vyas Alone sir, Professor of Visual Arts, School of Arts and Studies, JNU. He is going to deliver lecture on knowledge production and mythification and normatives. And for today's lecture, Professor Karunakara sir will be going to join. Will be going to chair the session. He is a Dalit historian, completed his MPhil and PhD from JNU, and he was head of Department of History of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Lucknow University, Central University, and he is now director and dean the Dalit and Tribal Studies, Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya. He is a founder member of Karunakar Institute of Dalit Knowledge. Now I request Mr. Shashikant sir to introduce Vyas Solone sir, and welcome and introduce Vyas Solone sir.
Yeah, Krishna.
Thank you. Uh, Good afternoon. It is my privilege and honor to welcome all of you to
Environmental
today's lecture,
science
where
online.
we have the rare opportunity to learn from one of the most distinguished scholars in the field of arts and aesthetics, Professor Y. Sir. Sir is a professor at the Center for Arts and Aesthetics at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, with, a, with an impressive academic background, including an MA in Fine Arts History from MS University, Baroda, and MPhil and PhD from JNU. He brings with him a wealth of expertise and over 16 years of teaching and research experience. His work spans a wide range of topics, including ancient Indian art, Buddhist art, popular visual culture, caste studies, and modern Indian art. Beyond academia, Dr. Professor Alone has been recognized with prestigious honors such as the UGC Research Fellowship and the ICCR Chair Visiting Professorship in Shenzhen, China. Professor Alon's contribution to the field are not just academic but transformative. His thought-provoking research and publications have provided deep insight into the intersection of art, culture, and society, shedding light on themes of identity, history, and resistance. We are incredibly fortunate to have him with us today to share his knowledge and perspective. Please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Professor Y.S. Alon, sir. Welcome, sir. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, Shashikant. I request all of you to give a big hand to both of the dignitaries. Now, thank you. Now we are going to start our lecture, and I request Professor Vyas Solone sir. I request Vyas Solone sir to take over. Thank you.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so my PPT is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll start my lecture. Thank you. Actually, it's Professor Karunekara literally forced me to do this lecture. So, well, thank you very much. For I start my lecture, I titled it as Knowledge Production, Mythification, and Normative. It is a daunting task as to how do we define knowledge these days. The Indian knowledge system is being advocated and being promoted these days. There is a robust imposition to explore possibility to propose the IKS, that is Indian knowledge system. The fundamental question in this regard is which IKS has emancipatory and transformative powers as part of knowledge production process. The academic formulations that are often structured more at a formal level are generally construed as the knowledge system. In a book, The Inner World, author Sudhir Kakkar has cited example of Rama as ideal hero or as ideal persona that gets emulated by the males in Indian society. However, the fundamental question that arises is how far it is practical and had it been the case, then the caste Hindu society certainly would not have seen the non-caste Hindu girl as rightful lust. Rightfulness is a category that comes to the mind having value judgments. Values are also associated with normative that are nurtured over a period of time. Rightful lust is a created category to exercise desires deeply rooted in hierarchies. The lust for body becomes paramount, and hence rightfulness is created in order to get involved in the bodily pleasure. Uttam Kamble, in his well-known Marathi book Anishta Pratha, narrates in detail as to how caste Hindu boys and men exercise their lust or bodily desires over the lower caste female bodies as their rightfulness. It is in this context the ideal of Rama becomes a contested category, and consequently the ideal formulation of a man around the personas of advocacy through the idol of the mythic figure in a public sphere remains an imposition. Through such impositions, the claim knowledge production process is directed by the ideas of divine and sacred that does not become part of critical inquiries. In an autobiography by Bhavar Megwal, there are interesting narratives from his personal encounters and the actual lived experiences. He narrates that his teacher would teach about sun as a solar planet with enormous temperature beyond human imaginations or capacity of resistance, and the same teacher would teach in Shakha that sun is a fireball that was held by monkey god Hanuman. This is a big contradiction. Indian society is living with many contradictions. Dr. Ambedkar, in his speech in the Constituent Assembly, remarked that on 26 January 1950, we are going to enter into life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. Dr. Ambedkar has pointed out towards contradictions in three spheres, mainly social, economical, and political. Nevertheless, contradictions are not confined to these three spheres alone but are observed in every walk of life. In everyday sensorial world, our understandings are produced many contradictions, including epistemic as well as related consciousness. The very functioning of mind is governed by contradictions that are deeply connected with the belief system. Long ago, Dr. Ambedkar, while delivering lecture at Gokhale Institute, Pune, observed that in the age of Mr. Gandhi, learning, if it is not despised, is certainly not deemed to be necessary qualification of a politician. Certainly, learning has never been deemed fit while selecting the candidates by respective political parties in India. Very few followed the aspects of learning, whereas many systematically adhered to the logic of Mahatma Gandhi. Dr. Ambedkar further observed that in the age of Ranade, the leaders struggled to modernize India. In the age of Gandhi, the leaders are making her a living specimen of antiquity. The idea of specimen of antiquity is further strengthened by the appellation of Gobar Patti associated with northern India or Gangetic Valley and the outside the Gangetic Valley these days. Dr. Ambedkar, in another lecture on Ranade Gandhi Jina, makes a statement that the Puranas and Shastras, which he manufactured in tons, are treasure trove of sharp practices which Brahmins employed to befool, beguile, and swindle the common mass of poor, illiterate, and superstitious Hindus. Now let us examine the two important observations proposed by Dr. Ambedkar as phenomenon of present and how normative has been part of such projects. It is therefore necessary to see the threshold of historical junctures where Constitution of India becomes a pivotal document as well as guiding principles and rules. There are a couple of important provisions that have played an important role in killing certain ghettoized normative that are in practice. They are mainly Article 14, which talks about equality before law, Article 19, freedom of speech and expression, Article 25, freedom of conscience and free profession, practice, and propagation of religion. Article 51 is all about creating scientific temperament or scientific rationality. The above provisions in the Constitution of India help us to define the phenomenon of cultural matrix of cultural and psychological contradictions. Reading of contradictions is a necessary means of understanding the normative involved in shaping the ideas towards undemocratic means of practices of anarchies that are practiced in the Indian society. Scholars are involved in understanding practices of anarchy from the Foucauldian terms. On the other hand, the postcolonial have advocated the ideas of amnesia to the idea of erasure. Both conveniently bypass the shaping of consciousness as well as role of normative that are an integral part of acceptance and rejection of all the time. While analyzing anarchy, Foucault observes many latent structures associated with it but does not analyze the reason of behavior as well as governing facets associated with behavioral changes. He accepted anarchy as an integral part of consciousness of functioning human mind, where there is no rule of values and judgmental acceptances. The postcolonial accepted this logic as it helps them to conceal the undercurrents of social behavioral patterns of their social fraternity, or to be precise, is to safeguard caste interest of their own self and to safeguard the personas of Superman as being created by the Manu Dharma Shastra. नाव दिस अ व्हॉट्सअप मेसेज संत गाडगे महाराज हे अज्ञान युगात विज्ञान सांगत होते आणि आजचे महाराज विज्ञान युगात अज्ञान सांगतात. Let us examine the nature of phenomenon that gets circulated on the social media these days. My artist friend Shiva Gaur has circulated this message in Marathi, which reads as follows. Saint Garge Maharaj was propagating sciences in the age of ignorance, and today's Maharaj, that is claim religious saints or godmen, are propagating ignorance in the age of sciences. I'm sorry for the spelling mistake. One of the known person in the public sphere is Dhirendra Krishna Shastri, alias Bageshwar Baba, known for his undemocratic statements and claims of possessing miraculous powers, was challenged by the city in the city of Nagpur. His proximity to political authorities is known in the public sphere in India. The Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti in Nagpur challenged the miraculous powers of the Baba that paved ways to cancellation of his mega show at Nagpur in January 2023. Dr. Shyam Manav of the rationalist organization challenged the Baba Godman and he had to flee the city. FIR were filed against him, but the police investigation gave him the clean chit at the behest of the political state. The political state has gone into making of anarchy and imposing such practices on the law-abiding citizens of the Republic of Government of India. Political state becomes a functional entity and acquires powers to legitimize the normative at its best. And hence, despite having Article 25 and 51 in the Constitution of India, these provisions are systematically bypassed by the political state. The political state has created a Superman syndrome that has its genesis in Manusmriti and not in Nietzsche. It constantly created hero worship. The idea someone will come and save us is a Brahmanic theory of Superman that kills a will of transformation. It has affected the large masses and predominantly the OBC community that have been part of syndromic living. Dr. Ambedkar, in his celebrated essay on Ranadi Gandhi in Jinnah, observed that the Hindu philosophers had both their philosophy and their Manu held apart in two hands, the right not knowing what the left had. The political state has been brought confrontations with constitutional state, and subsequently a big question emerges in the very functioning of the ideas as to what state does it belongs to. Confrontation also gets in differentiating political morality and constitutional morality. Ideally, the constitutional morality should have been part of forerunners in every sphere of life, but it is normative that guides the political to realize its power towards adherence to the Manudharma Shastra. The political morality is guided by the political ideology, whereas constitutional morality is guided by the principles enshrined in the Constitution. The constitutional morality empowers to have its citizen a scientific temperament, and today it is the scientific developments that have created economic powers to control the every sphere of life. It may be observed that the Superman theory of Madhu Dharma Shastra has dangerous potential of killing constitutional morality. One of the best examples in recent times is a persecution by state and judiciary in protecting the constitutional rights of the citizens of the Republic of Government of India. Though political morality often not cited as reason, but the shaping of the political morality has deep connections with the normative. Normative being a problem does not become part of criticality and hence remains as a part of umbilical cord. Anarchy being part of practice of human psyche of imagined power bestowed in hierarchical thinking, religious divine and sacred goes out of interrogative consciousness where self is constantly posing in the Brahmanic eye that never attempts to become a non-self. Constitutional morality being a fluid category, political morality has adherence to the political ideology. It is thickened by the normative functioning of the consciousness that is deliberately kept outside the purview of the interrogation so that fruits of anarchy can constantly be reaped by the hegemonic communities neither who have neither constitutional morality nor have constitutional ethicality. Rhetorical exaggerations have established as a new normal. In reality, they have been part of Superman of Manudharma Shastra. The Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, in a public address, made many rhetorical statements, including the claims that India had plastic surgery in ancient India. And in another address, he had collapsed three different historical figures into one time zone, claiming that Guru Nanak, Ravidas, and Kabir were conversing with each other. The rhetoric of the Prime Minister is construed as new knowledge, a perfect analogy with claimed consciousness of protected ignorance. There are many such unscientific and historical statements by the democratic Chakravartin of the present era, where political morality is totally transformed into political category of Savarna conscious of performative violence, of perversion, of heaviness of belief in divine power getting transformed into the self, a perfect logic of another version of the Vedanta. Thus, the idea of truth can be contested on many grounds. Often it is said that we are living in the post truth world. What is post truth is difficult to define. Suppression of fact is often considered as era of post truth. In reality, India had never achieved the so called truth by examining the facts. It has different set of facts that are part of their normative consciousness, and hence the word scientific rationality, enlightened mind, or intellectual mind are far away from the process of knowledge production process of transformations and create an ability of becoming. This is an image photographed by Mumbai based young female photographer Aparna Odve during the time of COVID. when the political leadership appealed to the citizens to bang plates and clap to drive away COVID in the country. The image is a graphic example of urban so-called educated lot of this nation. This is a locality in Mumbai where the cost of the each flat goes in crores and certainly not affordable to the normal citizen in the country. They are all English educated and are part of old and new generation. Thus, to say that India lacks education is nothing to do with the education as such. Cultural sphere of belief system becomes the sole controller of the mind consciousness that is governed by the that is governed by the consciousness of senselessness. Knowledge production by such acts becomes part and pride and not part of shamelessness. Sorry. A well-known politician in India, Mr. Ramdas Athavale, is known for his acts of senselessness. During COVID, he composed a poem and asked people to recite, "Go Corona, go." Mr. Athavale is a good example of false claim of scientific rationalism, which is constantly getting advocated by his own community. The Superman in the form of democratic Chakravartins has positioned itself on the mythologies that are constantly propagated as historical realities. Example of existence of scientific temperament in the form of elephant head attached with the human body is an example of erroneous lowness in the glare of the scientific rationalism. The scientific institutions like NICER or ICER performs Saraswati chanting for its all annual functioning and performs rituals as part of Indic culture. The scientific community and institutions in India could never come out of their sacred and divine. Sacred and divine is a systemic tool that keeps the Shudras away from education and realization of mental slavery. When consciousness is understood as part of subjective category, it becomes a lethal weapon created by the so-called intellectual consciousness that have created a distinctly articulated adherence mechanism to the ghettoized past that influenced greatly the historical consciousness people have constructed. Their construction is guided by the Brahminical community that has tacit connections to the role of control and benefit mechanism. Consequently, the narrative generated by the Brahminical cultural nationalism serves to maintain protected ignorance. Act of intentionality as mediated by the media images are telling examples of digital fraud generated by the educated mindset. Their intentionality is to have perennial ignorance to be maintained under the name of tradition of divine and sacred. How anarchy is being maintained and how who are beneficiaries of anarchy does not become matter of analysis by the post-colonial framework as well as so-called theoreticians or theory as such. Colonial rule is blamed as eliminating subjective positions of the consciousness and injecting inferiority against the Victorian superiority. The post-colonials have claimed that the political rule has been responsible for negation of civility and liberty. Such a falsity is possible only under the Puranic and Shastric logic of creations, where human is made into a robotic existence and remain in the valorous narrative of great pride and is also made to create violence as an act of duty. The larger question is has frame the larger question is, has the framework impacted our consciousness of understanding of the past and nurturing the presuppositions? This is a huge question needs to be analyzed not only from the subjective position but also by the active selectivity of the signifier. Derrida claimed that signifiers have no fixity of meaning. However, I submit that the meaning depends on the subjective position of the signifier itself. For a language expert, It becomes a task as to how one can attribute to the centrality of meaning. On the other hand, for a cultural historian, the task is how signifiers are selected or the choices made to understand the signification process in the given historical phenomenon. The Hegelian dialect has greatly influenced the historical interpretations that are replaced by the Marxist interpretations, where conditionality of the period is important factor and not the spirit. Nevertheless, both deny the role of human consciousness and propose to understand the psyche as a part of spirit and base and superstructure. But the larger question is, does it relate to the amnesia and paranoia? Can then interrogative can then interrogate the process through which the agency of interpretation becomes the central authority of interpretation. Is amnesia and paranoia are product of intentionality that is embedded within the deep structures of thought guarded by the presuppositions? Divya Dwivedi, in a recent essay, The Psychomatic of Caste and Psychoanalysis in India, makes a pertinent observation that the question of psychoanalysis in India should begin with acknowledgement of two facts: the psychic dimensions of sufferings that is inflicted on the lower caste by the social order, and the psychic dimensions of the denial or vernewing of caste by the upper caste. Two binaries Divya has proposed are the product of the intervention through the self as an agency and a proposal to be in a righteous configuration to make a large critique of the existing agencies of control who at no point of time would like to transform. Thus, the role of conscious self needs interrogations not only to create centrality of meaning but also resultant potent signifier that would constantly create concealments all the time and make consciousness as a part of sacred and keep out of the purview of any inquiry. It thickens the process of bruteness. Bruteness, brutality, inflictive of violence are the safeguards played by the syndrome of divinity, as well as epistemic violence, unconditionally supported by the Vedanta. The fact that colonial India empowered many to have access to history and created a historical consciousness of the real world and not adhering to the mythic history. The question of knowing, acquaintance, is another nomenclature or a term or appellations that are differently directly related with the social group. No inscription is read on or deciphered till the advent of colonial times. Even even then, the social claims of custodian of knowledge is a syndrome nurtured throughout and also through the language. Dharmakirti, in his seminal text Nyaya Bindu, explains the category of yogi pratyaksha and its knowledge use the term nirvikalpa, that is divide of imagination. Dissemination of nirvikalpa in the public sphere is an act of interrogations and explorations of multitudes attached with the consciousness. Professor Pradeep Gokhale in Vadanya writes that Dharmakirti has used the Nyaya account of debate not only as a Purva Paksha, a position to be refuted, but also at least partly as the raw material for reconstruction. Professor Gokhale engages with Nyaya Shastra of the Gautama and mentions about justification. Justification in the public sphere is heavily based on the presumptions than logical reconstruction. Justification gave rise to certain kind of consciousness that forbids reconstruction as well as dismantling of ideas. It is in this context the concept of protected ignorance is an interrogative process of and for justification. It is generally argued that rationality is relative. Philosophy greatly advocates relativity, and the relativists have taken the position of intervention as markedly different. Though rationality is relative, but its relativeness depends on objective. If the objective of the rationality is to ward off ignorance, then it becomes the righteous rationality. And if the objective of the rationality is not to ward off ignorance, conceal ignorance, then it becomes unrighteous rationality, and consequently, it becomes protected ignorance. There is a process of reconstruction. The process of reconstruction has to be based on the logical formulations of how a knowledge production process is aimed at killing protected ignorance. Nature of existence, though looks natural, but also has the process, and to unravel the process, objective of metaphysics is pertinent. Example of protected ignorance, say for example, a professor of physics gets up in the morning and pours water to sun, despite knowing the fact that water will never reach to sun. Similarly, the objective formulations that are based on presuppositions has and cultural psyche have a different dimensions. Somehow, it has always created a ghettoized thinking, which people would like to adhere to all the time, despite learning sciences, despite learning so-called the righteous education. The systematic tool of righteous education becomes an imposition by the Brahmanical polity, and it becomes very much part of the normative, where the mythic does not become part of the process of interrogation. Public sphere and its historical consciousness has grown through the political power and voice. Nevertheless, those who claim to write scientific history could not come out of their belief and presuppositions. One of the classic example is the periodization in Indian history. The idea of Vedic period becomes homogeneous advocacy by the claimed scientific history writings as well as Brahminical cultural nationalists. But none provide any evidence as to where was Vedic period and what are its material evidences. Their advocacy is based on the imagined narrative, a perfect example of Vikalpit, and is opposed to the logic of Nirvikalpa advocated by Dharmakirti. Can such practice be assigned to the amnesia and paranoia both? The Brahmanical textual tradition is a problematic paradigm, but its sanctity is diligently maintained. The process of compilation of the text is a trivia that constantly propelled historical imaginations of euphoria to salvage and claim past in the present. Both the Mahakavya, Mahabharata, and Ramayana were systematically advocated as historical narratives even before colonialism, but its reach was very limited, and the Shudras were the apt listeners. This narrative then contested by Mahatma Phule. Thus, it was the beginning of the breaking of the consciousness of senselessness. The religious belief gets converted into the frenzy passion of valor and pride. Mahatma Phule was instrumental in discovering the grave of Shivaji Maharaj. Till then, valorous Marathas were abhidnya. The Brahmin even had kicked Mahatma Phule and said, "या कुंबटल्याची समाधी कशाला साफ करतोस?" It says, "Why you are cleaning the samadhi of this Kunbi person?" The word is a pointed signifier as to how consciousness and understanding of caste gets disseminated by the Brahmin community in the state of Maharashtra. Today, Shivaji is projected as icon of Hindu protector. There is not a single record to show that he was narrated as Go Brahman Rakshak, but the records are forged and false narratives are propagated. Derrida claims that the texts create illusionary reality. Derrida considered role of metaphysics in a signifiers. As subjective position of the signifier is a key to generate meaning process in the signifier, the nature of structure of language is an instrumental form of reasoning to convey what the author desires to convey. Important here is how amnesia is conceptualized in the historical consciousness of the present, and what are the nature of agencies that have historical validations as part of naturalization process connected with preconceived ideas. Let me draw your attention to the photographs that have been made by Sudharak Olve. The medium of photography captures the natural make believe images that are observed by the naked eye. Sudharak captures the life of the prostitute by becoming an insider. One does not make her a sex symbol and yet another victim of the male gaze. For Sudharak, it is a quest to capture the representation of the prostitute's body, which experiences tormented life of a disgust where society turns blind eye to their existence. Since they come from the lower ebb of the society, essentially scheduled caste communities. Mumbai's red light area of Kamadipura is one such telling example that exists in the Sudharak's repertoire. The flesh trade, which happens in dingy places and in such abject living conditions, is a telling truth of consciousness of perversions which surround them. A bathroom, toilet, bed, kitchen, everything is clubbed in one space where the fulfillment of hunger is the criteria, is the only criteria. The community has evolved to live and share together without any inhibitions, making their life moving and live with coexistence with their friends, partners, but there is always a hidden anger. They do carry forward their ritual practices of earlier Devdasi life, making their caste an open secret. Now, I come to a very different point where I classified the achievements of India. So these are the four important achievements of India post independent India, that we are a fantastic labor supply country. We are a Mithyavadi Sanskriti, that is culture of mythic or myths. And third, we are a Vitambanavadi Sanskriti, that is culture of defamation. And fourth is Labhartis, that is beneficiaries. And therefore, one has to question what is this Vitambanavadi Sanskriti? Today, when I formulated this, not many people really liked it. But today, after especially Operation Sindoor, the ways in which media frenzy has been created, the ways in which certain officers of the government of India were targeted in the social media, the way they are abused, the way their religion is abused, the way their identity is abused, the way people are lynched, the way the lower caste females are paraded naked, the ways in which the Muslims are targeted, the ways in which the women's are targeted all the time. These are all very much part and parcel of the Vitambanavadi Sanskriti, that is culture of defamation. And this culture of defamation has been existing even in the pre-colonial India, and it is still continued in the post-colonial India. And therefore, one has to really make a very important self-intervention as to what kind of a state we have achieved, or for that matter, what kind of a society we have achieved in the real sense of the term. Now, this is a painting by Sanjeev Sonpimpre where one can see how it is associated with lynching and how the soft organs are completely tormented inside the body, whereas externally you don't see anything. And eventually person dies because of these injuries to the soft organs of the body. And then we have Organic Intellectual by Pinak Banik, where the Brahmin household, the Devghar is shown, and a Brahmin is holding image of Marx in one hand and image of Tilak on another. Whereas a son of a Brahmin is reading Gramsci upside down. Then we have this whole plethora of anchors who are creating a frenzy hysteria of consciousness of senselessness. These are very much contributory personas in the history of India who have never questioned any rationality, and to an extent that their channels even created the war hysteria. Not only that, they have created a false narrative that India captured Islamabad, India captured Karachi, so on and so forth. So, in the digital platform, you can create any kind of a falsehood, which is so easy to get accepted by the followers of those frenzy media. So, there is a category of bhakt. Now, these anchors are very much part of the bhakta logic, that is devotees. Now, unless until you become blind follower, you cannot become a bhakt. So there are two categories of the bhakt in India. One is a blind bhakt, the one who is completely blind, that is uh, completely, which is called andha bhakt in Hindi. And then there is another category that is called bhakt, that he is a simple devotee. So, with a simple devotee, you can argue that there is some space where you can argue, where you can say certain things, where there is a negotiation possible. Whereas in the Andhabhakt, there is no such negotiation, there is no room for any kind of a negotiation. And therefore, the logic of fraternity gets completely collapsed in such a bhakti syndrome, in such a in such a frenzy, and that becomes the collapse of the state, that becomes the collapse of the society. So the political state is very much hand in gloves with this kind of a frenziness that gets operated by the media, by these kind of personas who are very much part and parcel of protected ignorance in the society. Now I come to a very simple example. These are the two examples I'm giving you. Now, these are the two locomotives which India had produced, mainly by the Chittaranjan Locomotive Works in India. So one is called one is called as Lokmanya, which was produced for the Central Railway, and this WCM 5 locomotive was exclusively created as a part of DC traction, and it was named as Lokmanya, that is on the name of Lokmanya Tilak. Now, who was Tilak? What did he say? I don't have to repeat that. And second locomotive is was created for the Western Railway, where a AC/DC locomotive was exclusively created, that is WCM1, and it was named as Vallabh, that is Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So you have an interesting parallel examples. So one is a Patel, another is a Tilak, and both have the political projects. Now these political projects are more to do with certain impositions, as well as bypassing the communities and not becoming very democratic. So these are some of the important linkages which you have to understand and also see. Like Patel was part of the franchisee committee, and Dr. Ambedkar had proposed that the franchisee be made as fundamental right, whereas Patel proposed that no, 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 let the Constituent Assembly decide it. And Dr. Ambedkar said it very clearly that no, unless until it is proposed by the committee, the Constituent Assembly will not take it up. And that is what has happened in the Constituent Assembly. So the franchisee could not become a fundamental right in India. And now you see how the political dispensations in the country have created the objects of technology for their for the use of the nation on, and they are named after these political personas. So one has to see, one has to examine as to how this psyche gets operated. So what is important to understand the process that are constantly being reinscribed in the minds of human consciousness, that does not be allowed to have transformations within and outside. The non-self does not become the objectives in order to go away from gratifications, indulgence, the category of self that cannot be defined without analyzing the non-self. The role of thickness of tradition has created the facade of presuppositions and normative that has created selective amnesia and paranoia in the present day times. Thus, subjective position of the signifiers equally becomes an agency of functionality that has created violence in the consciousness connected to history. They are all part of protected ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The lecture is very fantastic and very enriching. I thank Vyas Alumni sir again for the fantastic lecture. Now I request Professor Karunakara sir, our chair, to give his remark, and after the chair's remark, we will go for question answer session. Thank you. Professor Karunakara sir.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Professor Y.S. Aloni is my best friend, and we studied together in JNU. And during my JNU days, also, Professor Aloni was very vocal and a potential scholar. I visualized that time itself. So undoubtedly, he's a new concept, that is a protected ignorance. That what he proposed in that, it is really it's really creating waves in the minds of the scholars. And as he rightly said, when a physics professor, he looks at the sun in the morning, a very great contribution at this hour of the time. It's really enriching. His concept of protected ignorance really enriching the scholars knowledge towards making a critical thinking over what's happening around us nowadays. So that is the main my interest is that to introduce his concept of protected ignorance to particularly my students who are around more than 300 members in this group, this Karunikar Institute of Dalit Knowledge. So when you put what is that in the sea, when you put fish net, you don't get all the fishes, you will get only few. Like that, when we have more than 300 plus members, so when we organize the lecture, so I'm happy to see that around 50 people joined. Now it's going and coming. However, so the importance is that quality. We really I really appreciate from my side Professor Aloni for formulating such a thoughtful concept called protected ignorance, and and how he is encountering the knowledge constructing narrative, how the mythification is being mythifying the knowledge, how it is being normating through the different ways, by involving the by involving the popular personalities in the public sphere, by making them to give such a uh, mythic statement in the form of knowledge, to normalize the myth as a knowledge. So this is a kind of protected ignorance. Why this is protected ignorance being done? It's again to strengthen the that typical Brahminical varna and caste system. So I really appreciate Professor Y.S. Aloni, for bringing out this is highly valid academically as well as socially, the concept of protected ignorance, and how you are applying that concept to the mythification of the knowledge and making it a normative. It's really wonderful lecture. Professor Aloni, I am really thankful on behalf of Karunikara Institute of Dalit Knowledge. We have no started this institute a few years back, and we conducted one conference also. Professor Shakti Kumar of JNU, he is a professor of economics from JNU, and one Professor Shashi Kumar from Ambedkar Central University, Lucknow. Both of them were chairing that session, chairing that conference, and they brought out those conference papers into a book also, as a Dalit worldview book, which around 30 papers are there in that book. It's about the Dalit perspective of the world. The title as a Dalit worldview. So Karunikar Institute of Dalit Knowledge is doing uh, this kind of knowledge interaction works activities by involving the scholars, PhD scholars particularly. And recently we started from the Ambedkar Jayanti of this year, Dalit Knowledge series. So first lecture was delivered by Professor Aloni from JNU, and I'm really thankful to Professor YS. No, the first lecture was delivered by Professor Chinna from JNU, and I'm really thankful to Professor Aloni for accepting my invitation to deliver this lecture as a part of Dalit Knowledge lecture series. Uh, it's a really wonderful lecture and thought provoking. I'm sure that my students, particularly, and participants from different parts of India. There are many participants I could find from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, as well as Delhi, and some people from Calcutta also, and Maharashtra. Obviously, there my student friends. So all of them are there. Professor Aloni, once again, giving your time. I'm really thankful to you. And I really appreciate. I take this opportunity to really appreciate your contribution in the form of the wonderful and very highly valid and scholarly concept of that protected ignorance. The way you are the way you were created a formulation, a concept that really taking the level of a scholarly critic of Brahminical system to the high level through your concept. Once again, I appreciate Professor Aloni.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much once again for giving this opportunity to this Karunikar Institute of Dalit Knowledge. Thank you, Professor Aloni.
Thank you. I will be happy to answer any question if anybody has any question.
Yes, sir. May I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, I am from MJ Perry, Rohilkhand University, Bareilly, a LLM student, Ajit Singh. जी sir, my question is that how should we deal with them who identified a rational man as downtrodden if someone question on a religious or mythological concept like कलावा bearing in hand. Someone said कि हम नहीं पहनते, we don't wear it, but majority of people identified such person as downtrodden or Dalit, etc. How should we deal with them? Because they are in majority, because OBC, general, both are with the same concept of knowledge or thinking.
Well, they are very much part and parcel of protected ignorance. Whether you wish to be part of protected ignorance or you wish to be a part of Ambedkarian thinking, the choice is your own. And my entire attempt is always to be part of Ambedkarian thinking and not to be part of the Brahminic thinking. At the same time, even one has to see how you reject those symbolisms. I don't believe in these kind of things, and I don't believe in these kind of identities as well. However, people believe in these identities, and you have to constantly get engaged with them and tell them what is happening. This whole anarchy which is being practiced, which is being controlled by the Brahminical thinking, and actually OBCs are the actants in this anarchy.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, they need to be made conscious. As long as you don't create the righteous consciousness, the society will not change. It is as simple as this. And no violence is going to change the society. Let me tell you, it is the hate, anger, and violence are an integral part of the mind consciousness. And as long as you do not change that kind of a mindset, people will not change. And
Yes,
I
sir.
think Buddha is a fantastic example.
Yes,
You
sir.
have to believe in the non-violent and the constitutional methods. And these constitutional methods are very important, which are very much part and parcel of the some leverage toward the scientific knowledge system, or for that matter, creating a humanness. See, the creation of humanness has number of facets. It has to be created at each and every level. You see, you have to respect a fellow human being first. Without respecting a fellow human being, you cannot create fraternity. At the same time, the element of hate, anger, violence is an embedded category of the caste Hinduness. That caste Hinduness needs to be addressed publicly, personally, in every walks of life, in every sphere of life. That is what Dr. Ambedkar did, and that is how you have to strategize ourselves. You can't, abuse people.
Yes,
By
sir.
abusing people, I don't think people will change. You see, it is a love, it is a compassion, it is a karuna that changes people. And you have to live accordingly. You have to strategize yourself accordingly. So the task on any Ambedkarite is a tremendous task, because he is not thinking of self, he is also thinking of the society, that how he can make transformations in the society. He or she makes a transformation in the society. And if you don't have a transformation agenda in your life, then certainly your life becomes very objectiveless. It is
Yes,
as
yes,
simple as this. There won't be what Dharmakirti called as hetu dharma. So you won't have any hetu in your life, purposiveness in your life. So the purposiveness has to be decided, has to be strategized, and at the same time, it has to be of a contemporary nature, and not going back to those myths, not reinscribing those myths, rather contesting those terrain, contesting those ideas, and constantly make transformation in the society. And people always ask me one question, like how things are going to change and all those, and people mainly talk about the political situation in the country. My simple answer is, the consciousness needs to be addressed. When there is a change of consciousness, certainly there will be a change of the political dispensation and your political choices. As simple as this. I mean, there is
okay.
no rocket science involved in it. It
Yes, sir.
is the role of consciousness that plays an important role. Say, for example, you want employment, whereas the voters of Mr. Modi does not want employment. The day they will say that we want employment, Mr. Modi will create employment for them. It's very simple. So
Yes, sir.
the political demands in the political democracy becomes very, very important. And you have to make people conscious of their rights, of their demands, of how uh, how there are certain provisions in the constitution that helps you to create those kind of things. And at the same time, economic wealth is very important. You have to think in multiple ways. Say, the scientific temperament is not just to have a temperament, but actually make use of that in your productivity.
Yes, sir.
Large amount of people in China, they don't believe in any kind of stupidities, rather they believe in that scientific production. So the productivity becomes very important for them in order to make their life a good life. Here in India, we don't think on those lines. The professionalism is very important in every walk of life. And let me share my experience with you, that on the floor of our hostel where I was living in Shenzhen, they change in the entire day. They change the ACs of all the rooms, which you cannot imagine in India. एक घर का एसी बनाने के बदलने के लिए 3-4 घंटे ले लेते हैं हमारे वहां पे, तो
Yes,
पूरे
sir. Yes,
फ्लोर के बदल दिया उन्होंने एक दिन में, just within a day. Just imagine the nature of speed, the method of working, and the professionalism they have achieved. So that professionalism becomes very important, and it is to do with your productivity. So your mind consciousness is not merely a consciousness of rationality, but also consciousness towards productivity. So your productivity changes, your adoption of the technology changes, and it is very important to have those kind of technological means in order to make your life better life.
okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, yeah. My friend Professor Nilakar is raised hand. Professor Nilakar,
Yeah. Right,
Carry on.
Kennedy.
Yeah. So
Doctor
my friend
Yas,
Professor
yeah,
Nilakar is from Silchar.
so
Silchar. It's a sub. Yeah.
Nirakar will be more meaningful than talking professor. I little bit, my ideological commitment and my struggling life, and I become one among equals. Then I create a hierarchy here. I'll come back to Dr. Yash Datta. You said, I believe your face is bit familiar to me or not. I happen to be part of my close friend Kennedy. I address
No,
him as Kennedy.
Professor
Uh,
Aloni, Professor Aloni, Professor Aloni, open your video. Professor Nilakar, open your video also.
yeah, I am just sitting a bit informal. That's why I'm not opening.
Okay.
Okay. So let me,
Professor
let
Aloni,
me.
Professor Nilakar, he was with me in Brahmaputra. You
Oh,
heard, I mean, he was with us in Brahmaputra, and now he is in Silchar, Assam, Central University. He's a
Okay.
professor of sociology.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nirakar.
uh,
Yeah, yeah,
so
Nilakar.
just
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
in the very formative part of your lecture, I could, miss it owing to my preoccupation here as the semester end and lot of academic assignments and commitments and wind up. So I missed that and I couldn't, divulge into the entire discourse or the narrative that you had. What you have very candidly constructed or reiterated this protected ignorance, and in course of the latter part of your presentation, what on my own limited capacity, I understood, there still some level of ambiguity, ambivalence, inconsistency, at the level of constructing a very unified identity among of us. Like those who are being ruled and, dismantled and divided, we are receiving or standing at the receiving end with all kind of hierarchy and stratification, all kinds of exploitation, whatever that, values we attribute to our kind of sufferings. And I am, while agreeing with all your propositions, the very dominant theme that you intend to inculcate and inject into the mind of the millions of toiling Dalits. I somehow, with a kind of neoliberal or uh, uh, a very progressive utilitarian values, I try to, still I'm hovering around that if at all we are creating a kind of hierarchy or stratification, while we fail to unify the Dalit as oneness, unifying Dalit as one, not coming from different caste, communities, religion, culture, ethnicity, and forget about all these superstitious concepts like nation and state. Those are possibly not very applicable for a Dalit identity. The very concern which I'm not able to answer to myself with all my 30 years of acquaintance and my formal training, the kind of value system where I have studied. I sometimes share with Canadian informal note that why our very emphasis is not upon creating a very holistic or a very comprehensive Dalit identity, Dalit as one unified identity. Then, talking these things, of course, while you say that violence will create some kind of catastrophe and any radical safe, which if we follow, then that will be misleading. But as a student of history, or while you are taking the historical antecedents and precedents, We find, let it be say, this American War of Independence, let it be French Revolution, let it be the so-called whatever way India attained the independence. No, there is always violence. There is a radical departure from no many aspects. So science violence, science radical, transformative, and a very logical, scientific path and process. Can we think of building up a very conscious, egalitarian, unified Dalit identity, which will be helping all of us, and not in the same parameter as you have been following, because as we keep on talking about India's ethos and values and Indianness and various things, can we just build up a very robust and a very unified identity, since all these typical variable or discriminated institutions and values where Dalit identity can be put in the forefront? That's my fundamental question, which I am still, hovering on many fronts, and I am not able to come out of this trap. Though honestly, like my friend Kennedy, the extent he's putting his effort and trying to mobilize, and the commitment that he's showing, the lecture that you have delivered is excellent as far as the presentation is concerned. But my fundamental error that lies, or lacuna, you can say to a certain extent, where I intend to build up a massive Dalit unified, egalitarian, a stratified less identity, and that what is the parameter that you think, how the methodology that we need to evolve and devise, and whether this is a feasible or it's a deplorable concept, and that you can little bit, if you are like, that will be fine. Thank you. That much from me.
Let me respond to your question very differently. First of all, my lecture is not aimed at creating any kind of an identity or anything. Identity is not an issue for me. It is a problem with many people that they want to create a unified identity. I think Dr. Ambedkar had already made it very clear in 1956 when he converted. So the Buddhist identity becomes a very universal and a very accepted category of identity. So I go by that, and therefore there are no confusions in my mind. First, second thing is that there is no homogeneity in the Dalit. There is nothing called homogeneity of tradition. The society itself is a stratified society. Even within the scheduled caste, which are categorized as Dalits, there is a hierarchy. There is a stratifiedness, and you have to break that. Without breaking that syndrome, you cannot have the kind of a larger unity you wish to envisage. That is one thing. Second thing is that the population of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe is just going by those that numerical strength is just 22.5% or maybe 23% or 24% in the society. By uniting 24%, you cannot get power in the society. It is as power in a political sphere, if at all you are thinking more in terms of the larger political project. So you have to keep that in mind, that you are a minority, and by remaining a minority you cannot become a part of the governance. So you have to become part of, you need to garner support of lot of people, and you have to create that mega unity. And that mega unity is has to be functional at multiple levels. At a cultural level, there is another, there is one way. Second is a political level. Third is a social level. So the social and cultural become the first priority for us rather than the political, because political is a very short sighted. It is always, it all revolves around the political power, and whoever wins that combination, because it is all the numerical game. But the social and cultural remains a permanent solution, and therefore one has to forge that social and cultural identity, the cultural fronts. And how you do it, it matters, it matters to you. In my mind, I don't have any confusion. I'm absolutely, I'm not interested in creating any kind of a unified identity for the Dalits in India. No, I'm not interested in that, because Dr. Ambedkar has already given us the identity. So identity is not an issue at all. If you play with the identities, you will remain in the hands of the Brahmanical structural thinking, because the Brahmanical structural thinking has created identities of caste. And if you want to kill the caste and want to create an identity, Dr. Ambedkar had already done it by doing a conversion to the Buddhism. So you can have either whatever religion you belong to, it is all up to you, it is all your choices. Say for example, Dr. Umakant had made the 4 categories of Dalits. It's a very interesting thing, that categorization. He says category 1 is the Dalits who are identified themselves as Ambedkarite, who are involved in the process of transformation, that they want to change the society. Second is the son-in-law of the government, where like his only job, his only objective is to apply for a job which is reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and then society jai bhad mein. Then there is a third category called Harijan, who lives on the mercy of others, and there is a fourth category called the Bhadwa. He calls it as Bhadwa. So I translated it as bootlicker, who is willing to lick boots all the time of anybody. So people have to decide to which category they belong to which category they wish to live in. I can't impose those kind of things, but I have my criteria. And I tell people, okay, fine, it is up to you which category you wish to live in. And this applies to every social category in India. What category you wish to belong to? It is your choice. It is your preference. It is your politics. It is your consciousness of the political mind consciousness that guides you to have a choices. If you wish to remain in the syndrome of structured hierarchical thinking, you will never come out of it. And therefore, the whole logic of protected ignorance is not all about Dalits. It is all about interrogating the knowledge formation process in India, whether it is by any group, whether it is by OBC, whether it is by the Brahmanical cultural nationalists, or by anybody for that matter, whether it is creating an enabling process. That's a fundamental question. It's a moral and ethical question which you have to pose. Whether your theories which you are trying to propagate, which you are trying to build, do they have the ability of transformation? Is there this whole the process of do they have the potential of becoming? Everybody is being, but is there a potential of becoming? That potential of becoming needs to be tapped, not trapped, but needs to be tapped and needs to be understood. And then what are your objective formulations in making these kind of identities? Whether you, I mean, a Tamilian would like to have their Tamil identity, and why should I impose my identity on anyone? It is as simple as this. Let him have his Tamil identity. What is wrong in it? It's an ancient language, the most ancient language we have in India right now. All other ancient languages are dead languages, whereas Tamil is the only living ancient language in India. Let them have their identity. And what is wrong in it? There is nothing wrong in it. You can have multiple identities, but what are your ideological formulations? Whether your ideological formulations are for humanities, are for concerns for the change of the society, are there whether they are concerned for making India a better India, a livable India, a pride India, a proud India. These should be concerns. I'm not speaking like a typical typified nationalist, but rather I am speaking more in terms of Ambedkarian project of emancipation, where everybody is part and parcel of the citizen of Republic of Government of India. And that is why Dr. Ambedkar said that fraternity is a very key for transformation, for bringing newness in the society, for bringing human values in the society. And for him, fraternity is all about karuna, that is compassion, Buddha's compassion. And therefore, you have to even examine the policies of the government of India, how on two lines, whether they are on the line of compassion or they are on the line of daya, that is pity. Pittiness, the policies that are formulated on the basis of pittiness will never address or resolve the structural problems. Whereas the policies that are addressed on the basis of compassion will always try to address the structural problems and do corrective course of actions. That is how one has to see, and that is how one has to examine. And that is where your own self becomes very important. What you wish to be, whether you wish to be in that category
Right.
one or you wish to be in the other categories.
Right. Yeah. You have raised certain observations, but I believe it's not touching the core confronted structural impediments we have. While I don't know, with all my limited capacity of understanding, if multiple identity, if at all we are proposing, we may deviate or we may, you know, rather render disservice to the very necessity of Dalitism, that which is the larger identity, which is the ultimate identity.
Now, what is
And
Dalitism? What
uh, uh,
Nirankar, let me ask you, what is Dalitism? Can you define
uh,
Dalitism? There is
it's
nothing
a
called, let me tell you, there is nothing called Dalit discourse. I'm sorry
uh,
to say, I contest
yeah.
this category. There is nothing called Dalit discourse, because for a discourse you require a fundamental proposition or the theoretical proposition. What theoretical proposition you have? Ultimately, you fall back on Phule and Ambedkar. Ambedkar is not all about Dalitism. Let me tell you, Ambedkar is more
Okay.
universal. It is not
Okay.
confined only to Dalits. It applies to everyone, every citizen of Republic of Government of India. So the very idea of Dalit discourse does not have any theoretical proposition at all. It is not based on any kind of a theoretical foundation. When Dr. Ambedkar
Mhm.
makes analysis, let me complete. When Dr. Ambedkar makes analysis, he is very clear in his writings. When he writes annihilation of caste, he makes it very clear that nothing is permanent, everything is changing. In 1955, then again he writes, everything is nothing is permanent, everything is changing, being is becoming. It is that being is becoming, which is nothing but the whole, the nothing is permanent, everything is changing, is all about the impermanence, that Buddhist logic of Prasida Samutpad. So he is very much diligently following that. And you have that has that universal applications. You may believe it, you may not
Mm.
believe it. The theory of Pratitya Samutpad has a universal application.
Okay.
The theorization is a
I
reductive
think,
urge which,
yeah,
let me
I
complete. Theorization is a reductive urge which thrives on derivation. And I have not seen any Indian thinker creating any kind of a theory. I'm sorry to say that. They're all
right, right.
derivatives.
You are
They're
right.
fully
In
derivative.
this,
They don't
oh,
have any logic. They don't have any kind of a theoretical strong foundation that will create any kind of an enabling process. That creation of enabling process is very fundamental. Or even for that matter, dismantling of your own self is very important. Whether it is Dalit, whether it is a Brahmin, whether it is a Kshatriya. And mostly it is applicable to the caste Hindu society because they are so much into self. The Ambedkarites are not into a self. You have to understand that. And therefore, the
oh,
question of identity does not come as an obstacle. The question of identity does not become part of interrogation because we have to shun those identities as simple as this. And you have to create a new culture. How do you
Yeah,
create a new culture? The culture has to be
yeah, fine.
created. You cannot fall back on the history all the time. Say for example, today the neo Buddhists are become ritualistic. They are following that ritualistic Buddhism which is being practiced in Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Burma, which is nonsense, totally irrational. Then
Mm.
irrationalities has to be addressed, has to be questioned, and has to be rejected. You have to create that sense of cultural ethos that will create an empowerment. Today the youths are dancing. Today they are creating rap songs and all kinds of things. Number of things they are doing as a part of cultural signifiers in order to proclaim that they are not part of the Brahminical cultural nationalism, that they are not part of this hierarchical system. One has to understand this cultural logic, and without having this cultural logic you cannot build a larger narrative, or even for that matter the issue of identity. Why so much concerned about the issues of identity? The larger rubric of scheduled caste is an administrative term, and which is not
Mm.
homogeneous category at all. Nothing is homogeneous in India. Nothing is homogeneous. To create homogeneity, that means you're creating another set of I would say uh, the another set of the structural imposition,
Barriers. Barriers.
impositions.
Okay.
There has to have a fluidity.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
fantastic,
okay.
fantastic. Yeah, listen. Yeah, let me take it. See, fine. Identity lecture we can have some other time. This is about his concept of
Mhm.
protected ignorance.
You're
How
right, right, right.
we
Yeah.
apply to yeah. Thank
Mm.
you, Professor Nirakar, for
Mm.
no
No, it's all
wonderful
right.
intervention, and thank you, Professor
I think
Aloni.
it.
Yeah, Professor Aloni, for ventilating your contributing your thoughts so forcefully. Let's have the identity lecture some other time, right? Akash, find out some other question. Anyone want to have a questions? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Uh,
Dr. Yes, Datta.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
so, is there any other question to make it
Yes,
precise?
yes, Akash. I have one question
Professor
for sir.
Dr. Rakesh, I think Rakesh want to ask.
Yes, sir. Good
Rakesh raised
afternoon,
his
sir.
hand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. First of all, sir, very thank you and congratulations for this lecture and speech for according to topics. Sir, I have one question arise in my mind. According to the post truth is,
Your name,
sir.
your designation. Dr. Rakesh,
Okay,
your
sir.
name, your designation, which university you belong.
Sir,
Tell the what's
okay, sorry, sir. Sir, I am Dr. Rakesh C. Faklial, Assistant Professor, Dalit and Tribal Studies, Mahatma Gandhi Antaraष्ट्रीय Hindi Vishwavidyalay. Sir, my question is about post-truth age. Sir, the present age is called age of information. In the age of information, society is called post-truth society. Sir, could you elaborate about challenges to produce and protect knowledge in the post-truth age?
Well, the rubric of post-truth is being used these days, and mainly it started in the political sphere, that you are living in the era of post-truth. My argument is that there was a truth in India. When was the truth in India? India never lived in truth. It always
Yes.
lived in myths. So therefore, to say that we are living in a post-truth world in India is a false claim. Or even for that matter, if anybody is saying that they are modernist, it also becomes a false claim, because modernism is all about your liberty, equality, fraternity. So how much you have transformed yourself to those important principles of the in your life. Similarly, your claim of being postmodern becomes a dubious claim, because postmodernism is all about dismantling the presuppositions. And in reality, you are living with your presuppositions. Without killing your presuppositions, neither you can become modern nor you can become postmodern. It is as simple as this. There is no confusion in my mind. And when it comes to the whole role of information, how do you disseminate these informations, and whether you have a capacity? It is something like when you ask Grok some kind of a truth, it scans within a second and gives you some kind of an answer. Certainly humanly it is not possible. But yes, humanly it also possible in order to see the logical reasoning. Say for example, when, like in my classroom lectures, I always say, if suppose you want to become a good baba in the country, then you better read Milinda Pannu. It's a fantastic text, like how you answer certain questions. It is a sort of a training of a mind as to how you address those queries, and within a second you give those answers. So say for example, King Milin asked, oh, oh Bante, I have asked you the question. So the Bante Naksen replies, oh King, I have answered you the I have given you the answer. So very logical reasoning he builds, and it is very important to have this logical reasoning. The logical reasoning is, see, it's an interesting, there is an interesting discourse by Buddha in which is recorded um, in the Anguttar Nikaya, and it mentions the 4 or 5 categories of people, and he says that I will not engage with these kind of categories of people because they are of no use. The way I told you that there are bhakt, andhabhakt, and then there are bhakt. With bhakt you can engage because there is some space, there is room for some logical reasoning, whereas the andhabhakts don't have any logical reasoning at all. They will not listen to you at all. So it is better not to get engaged with those kind of people. The 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 the, the see, there is a, the large amount of people are having consciousness of senselessness. How do you deal with the consciousness of senselessness? Can you produce the theories that will really have address this issue of consciousness of senselessness at a sociological level, at a psychological level? The answer is no. Why there is, why the answer is no? Precisely because you do not consider the the caste Hindu syndrome does not empower you to think that it is a problem, that your normative is a problem, that your presupposition is a problem, that your idea of belief, your idea of divine and sacred is a problem. So therefore, you will not analyze those things, and therefore you will not question those that ethos, that logic, unless until you have this process of interrogation right from your school education. Then only then society will change. Otherwise, it will not change. Otherwise, what is I mean, you see, there is a Marathi text called Thoranchi Olak in Marathi. It's a school textbooks. How the person was introduced: Mahatma Phule, a Thor Samaj Sudharak, Dr. Ambedkar, Babasaheb Ambedkar, दलितांचे कैवारी, somebody is education something something something, Sardar Patel, Lauh Purush. These are the categories we have created. Now I'll give you another example. The people who oppose to Hindu code bill, they are constantly revered outside the parliament, and their names are given to chalk. Their statues are erected, those who were opposed to the Hindu code bill. So what did you do? You constantly inscribed anti-women persona in the public sphere. And now you are expecting that these the women's reservation bill or any kind of initiatives that will change the society. No, they will not. It is just next to impossible. And that is because you go with your normatives. See, there is not there. See, I see politics in two terms: Ambedkar, anti-Ambedkar. Ambedkar represents transformation, anti-Ambedkar represents the status quo. I'm not talking about the political parties. Even the claimed Ambedkarite political party can be anti-Ambedkar, and it has been proved all the time in the political sphere. So there, let us not talk about that political sphere. So you have to see the syndrome. You have to see how the functioning of the society goes and how it goes on making certain decisions. The frenziness which is there in the mob is all about Maro Saleko. Kill. I mean, can with this kind of frenziness, can you really have any kind of a dialogue? You cannot have any kind of a dialogue. The only dialogue you can have is either you stand in front of them with AK-47, or you stand with all your paraphernalia that will oppose their mightiness. That is, these are the only ways of doing things. You can't have any kind of a dialogue with these kind of people. So it is better to choose people who are having some kind of a room, and you have to create through that education system, through the righteousness of education. You can't have, constantly keep hammering, or telling people Gandhi was a Mahatma, and then when you discover that he was sleeping with the naked girl, young naked girl, and then you start questioning. The feminists in India hardly question that logic, or even for that matter politicians in India hardly question that logic. But the image of Gandhi is constantly printed on the currency of India. Do we oppose that? It is only Ambedkarites who will oppose that, but rest will not oppose that. Why they do not oppose that? Why it becomes this becomes a syndrome? This syndrome needs to be addressed, and it also, you have to generate alternative opinions, because the Brahminical polity takes a decision and imposes on the rest of the masses, and you don't have any other mechanism rather than creating any kind of a methodical opposition. And 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 there are ways. It's not that there are no ways. You get power and you change that. It is as simple as this. To get power you have to do a lot of things. I, as an academician, I'm not a politician. I'm an academician. I can be a defender of ideology, but I cannot be a defender of political party. As simple as this. I'm a defender of ideology. I can be a defender of ideology, but I cannot be a defender of political party. Why should I? Why should defend anyone who are absolutely nonsense, who are of no use in the society? There is no need. There is no point in carrying the burden who are of no use. As simple as this. And there is a history of baggage of these kind of people we are having in the society, and we are suffering for, because of that we are suffering. So our sufferings are multifold. It's not only one particular sufferings, but there are multiple sufferings. And the answers are also multifold. It's not that one singular answer is possible. No, that is not correct. Had it been so, then certainly with the googly Google everything would have been solved. As simple as this. Yeah, Dr. Anupam and Kiran has
Thank you, sir.
yeah has
Am I audible?
yeah.
Yeah. Sir, your lecture is very wonderful and fantastic, sir. I'm Dr. Kiran Kumre, Assistant Professor, Dalit and Tribal Studies, Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you two questions.
Uh,
My first question, is it possible to eliminate myth totally from the society? And my second question, does myth play only negative role or does it have positive contribution also to build progressive society?
okay. So I will first answer your second question.
Yes.
Okay, and then I will go to the first question. Um, you know, I'll give it in a different way. Say, for example, metaphysics. Ah, what role metaphysics has to play? If the objective of metaphysics is to ward off ignorances, it becomes a righteous metaphysics. Metaphysics per se is not bad. But if the objective of metaphysics is to ward off ignorances, it becomes a righteous metaphysics. And if the objective of metaphysics is not to ward off ignorance, then it becomes a protected ignorance. It becomes an unrighteous metaphysics. And consequently, it becomes protected ignorance. In a similar way, creating a myth, do you think that in the today's scientific rational world, creating a myth is a righteous way? When you have so many facts around you, when you have examination of lot of things. I'll give you one small example. The myth of, say, Badi Raja. Can you justify that? The myth of Badi Raja, King Badi. Can you tell me in which year he was? Can you tell me the location on in India where he ruled? And if you are accepting that myth, then you have to accept the supremacy of Vishnu.
Sir, voice is not coming.
Maybe there is a
Akash,
maybe there is a
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. Sorry. So you need not to have a myth for that. Second thing is the uh, whether the myths are good or bad. Again, it matters how, what are the objective of creating myth. Say for example, I'll tell you a small example. There is this whole idea of heaven, that you will get place in the heaven. Okay. Now in the Buddhist, in the Chinese Buddhism, it constantly says that you will get a place in that heaven, provided you do these things. And what are those things? Is following of the Panchashila and Arya Ashtangic Marg. That's it. So if the objective of, if that kind of a myth has these kind of objectives, then certainly over a period of time you will not even believe in that heaven, because that Panchashila and Arya Ashtangic Marg will completely wipe out the idea of that heaven and everything. So again, it depends on those kind of objectives. Second thing is, can you eliminate the myth? In the today's world, you have to study myth as a part of the cultural tradition. But that does not mean that you have to reinscribe these myths all the time. I give you one example. There was a tradition of Nagapuja in the Mahar community in Vidarbha area. And in every Nag Panchami or something, people would come and gather and they would recite certain stanzas. Say, for example, Jai Jai Dankare, Ukar Vika, to, Tujit Karuna, Pohana Pani, something. And it's a long chanting which people do. I forgot those chantings. I mean, I was knowing those chantings when I was child. But what is the use of the chantings? And then people say that you are a Nagvanshi. I don't understand this logic. What is Nagvanshi? There have been people in India who have been worshippers of the Nagas. They are very much recorded in the as a part of the non-Buddhist practices in the text called Chulanidesi. So you have to understand that they become very much part of the Buddhist community. And the whole idea of Muchalinda Buddha, where the Naga comes and spreads which is a myth. But in reality, it is a Naga, the person from the Naga tribe who comes and constructs that shelter for Buddha in reality. So there is a difference between the myth and the historical reality. We have to understand that over a period of time there is a mythicization, but that does not mean that mythicization has to be reinscribed in the 20th and 21st century. Dr. Ambedkar very systematically, made those distinctions in his Buddha and his Dhamma. And therefore the use of the text has to be very judiciously done. That, not that the myth always has a history. Myth is a myth and not a history. The very idea of that Durga and all those things and Mahishasur is a myth, is not a history. You can't chronologically put them. Same is the case with Badi Raja. Same is the case with number of those myths. But at the same time, the the community had this sutas, the tribal society. Similarly, certain communities in India, they have the traditional reciters, and these traditional reciters will always talk about their own heroes, and there is a history to it, and these histories needs to be tapped, needs to be studied very systematically. They need to be documented, and then you can really talk about those histories, that there is a reclaim of through the oral tradition. But not that everything is always a history in the oral tradition, but you have to distinguish that what is fiction and what is history, how certain things are placed in a very highly imaginative way, certain ways of formulations, certain ways of doing things. So the metaphysical meaning of the seven steps, which is mentioned, like the Buddha is after born, he walked those seven steps in Nidan Katha and in Lalita Vistara, have a different metaphysical meaning. That metaphysical meaning gets attributed later times, but before the metaphysical meanings emerges, but at the same time there is a pictorialization of that particular metaphysical metaphor through the pictorial traditions. So one has to understand this logic. There are number of those binaries, and these binaries cannot, like, you can't see the things in a all the time in black and white. There are grays, but in for the purpose of the transformation of the society, the grays are not useful. It's always a black and white which is useful. Yeah, so I hope I have addressed your question, Kiran.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
There,
My,
Dr.
there
Anupam.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Anupam,
Go ahead.
I am Dr. Anupam Maloni.
yeah, please.
I teach in Andaman College in Andaman Nicobar. So my question is, you have used in your lecture somewhere the fact and the truth. So are these two, whether we put the concepts or whatever, are they synonym to each other, or is there any difference between these two concepts? Thank you.
Somebody speaks a lie is a fact, that he is lying. That does not mean he is speaking truth. So you have to differentiate between fact and truth. That the fact has that universalism, but the truth needs to be examined further. Then only then it becomes the truth. Otherwise, it is something like out of your facts you create a philosophy, and and then you rationally investigate, and when it tests that rationality, then you call it as a knowledge, as a theory. So in a similar way, you have to understand the fact and the truth, that the facts are enormous, but not that every fact will have a truth. Say for example, the people started giving milk to Ganesh idol because there was this myth which was spread that Ganesh idol is drinking milk, and पूरा देश जो है वो गणेश को दूध पिलाने गया. This is a fact, but on that count this is not truth. So you have to understand between these two elements very judiciously.
Thank you, sir. Now we are really out of the time, and we don't have time for the next question. So, sir, Karunagara sir, can we go for final vote of thanks?
Yeah. Carry it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, with the permission of the chair, I'm going to vote of thanks for today's lecture. First of all, I thank Professor Vaya Salone sir to give us such a fantastic lecture and enriching lecture. And after the lecture, he really uh, take pains. He really give wonderful answers and really uh, give us a very knowledgeable uh, replies to the questions. I'm really thankful to him. I also thank our chair, today's chair, Professor Leila Karunakara sir, for giving us a space to conduct such a wonderful lecture. and we are hoping that we are in next coming months we are also going to have such kind of a enriching and academic lecture and engaging lecture with the professor of uh, uh, national importance to us. And I also thank the participant who patiently listen whole lecture, and after that they ask very interesting questions. And we are hopeful that you also get a very precise answer to it. So I thank all of them, to the participant, to the chair, to the guest, and all the coordinator of KIDK who are here, and all the person who participated uh, in conducting this lecture. I thank all of them, and with this word, I declare the session is end, and hopefully we are going to meet soon. And the other important news, we are going to upload this whole lecture in YouTube. So please, if someone missed anything, we will going to get it from there. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.